Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 261 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome back to the show. In this episode, we are going to get into the Fundamentals of Marksmanship, Part 2. Again, a customer had asked and a listener had asked, they found our old series that we had posted up many years ago, and these things get hidden. Like, a lot of people don't go back and look through the archives of the podcast, and he had found them, and he was like, oh my gosh, what a great listen, and listened to it multiple times. So we're going to continue on that series. It's a 5-part series. It's going to be part 2. We're going to repost it up. We hope you enjoy it and get some great stuff from it and actually get a chance to learn and grow as a shooter. So without further ado, here we go. So we were into our fundamental series and we were getting through parts and pieces, just trying to really share with you all the quick tips and tricks to get you the best out of your shooting. And in this one, we received a great question from a Daniel K. And Daniel had asked us 2 specific questions. He was talking and asking me to explain a little bit more about driving the rifle. And we've talked about this in a previous podcast. So if you want, go back, search the podcast, and look for the podcast specifically talking about driving a rifle or learn to drive the rifle. And then he had asked also about the thoughts about pistol shooting and how does pistol shooting and those techniques apply into learning the art of precision shooting. And I thought both were great questions and actually deserve some time. So when we talk about driving the rifle, his email had asked a very specific question, but I'll wrap it up in a nutshell that he's trying to tame the recoil, trying to control the hop. Specifically in his email, he said that he uses a very loose grip, jelly-type grip, and he was asking about what is the real concept? What are you trying to do? Why are you doing this? And so I've come to, over the years, especially watching new shooters shoot on the firing line, to really understand that when you shoot a rifle, you have to sort of tell it what to do without overbearing it. And so there's this pendulum that swings back and forth from what I would consider the very loose grip, which would be like bench rest or PRS, where they're doing almost free recoil techniques, to overbearing, think panic mode with a 338 lapel with no muzzle brake, and you're getting ready to shoot it. You know how much you're going to clamp down on the rifle. And everything in between, and they all have an impact on your shooting. And what I say about rifles and learning to drive the rifle is I've come to, over the years, really believe that the steering wheel on any rifle is the buttstock. That is where you steer the rifle, but you also have to drive it. You know, when you shoot a rifle, here's what it's like. And maybe if you all have kids, or if you're soon thinking about having some, let me tell you something. Raising children is like shooting. You have to have a level of control without manipulation. You have to have boundaries, and you can't hold on too tight, right? But you can't let them loose, right? So when you pull the trigger on a rifle, if you just do the loosey-goosey grip and, you know, you're really just loading a little bit of pressure on the buttstock, when that gun goes off, it does whatever it wants to do. And sometimes, depending on where you're touching it and how you're touching it, it's almost like giving free rein to a child at 15 years old and saying, hey, go do what you want to do. I mean, you're really asking for all kinds of trouble, right? The same thing happens if you over-control the rifle. So let's just say you bring that child and you say, you clamp down on them like prison-type mentality, right? You know, you're on Alcatraz, here's your box. So if you do that, then all of a sudden, you know, you've got other issues. So you're over controlling it, and then shooting a rifle would be almost like clamping down in fear. You know, you're really over gripping the rifle. Your face is getting really pushed into it. You're all clenched up, you know, ready for the recoil. That's what I would consider over controlling. But you have to drive the rifle in a very specific way, and you have to do it consistently to get just beautiful results. So you just can't let it go willy-nilly where it wants, and you can't manipulate it. If you try to force the shot to tell it where you want it to go, it doesn't listen, right? Just like a child, right? So rifles are the same way. You can't manipulate them and force them into doing something. It still has a lot of energy and recoil and all these other things that it has to deal with when you pull the trigger. So what I like to tell folks when you're driving a rifle is this. You want to have very good, consistent, natural point of aim that you're not forcing the crosshairs onto a target, right? You're not pushing or pulling. That's big. And then we go to our hand and we talk about a firm handshake grip. This is really important because we have to control the rifle. And what I found is that when people do a loose grip and they preach that they can shoot better if they do the loose grip that you see being adopted almost like free recoil style. And I agree. If you practice that technique enough and your gun's heavy enough, that removing yourself as much as possible from the rifle, some shooters do shoot better. But in real world scenarios, for hunters, for match shooters that have to shoot in other positions where you actually have to grip the rifle, you have the burden of mastering 2 or 3 different grips on the rifle because you just can't loose grip it if you're shooting slung or if you're shooting off of a barricaded uneven. At that point, you're gripping the rifle. So my rule of thumb is just learn one good solid handshake grip and go with it. And there's some tricks with your fingers and placements, where we put each finger and where we're touching the stock. There's lots of little things like that play into it a little bit, but I would rather master one grip and apply it to every position regardless, and then try to learn and master 2 or 3 grips, right? Then we go from there to loading the bipod or pulling the rifle into the shoulder, either or, and it's about 2 or 3, pounds of energy, or what I try to tell students about 2 to 3 pounds. That's all you want to be pushing or pulling. So if you picture a 7-pound rifle, you're pushing about half the pressure of what the 7-pound rifle would move at. And then the last thing is cheek weld, cheek pressure. And then we go into our setup, right? Natural respiratory posture, clean, pull the trigger. But your left hand is usually back there, especially if we're shooting prone or from other positions, where if your left hand isn't touching the front of the stock, it's holding the rear as a support. That's the steering wheel part of it. That's where you learn to drive the rifle. People have a tendency to fall asleep what's in front of their eyes, and they forget that how they grip that rifle and the consistency of aiming it. That's where your aiming is done, and you have to hold that through the shot and let the rifle do what it naturally wants to do through your fingers or whatever bag it's setting on without you manipulating it and without you flinching, moving, releasing, relaxing, all of this while the shooting's going on. So, for example, there's so many things that go on at the rear of the rifle I could spend hours talking about. And if you want to see me talk hours about it, stop over to our online long-range shooting school because the setup is huge. And we talk about 1,000 different things that people do unknowing to them. It's no fault of their own. They're not purposely making these mistakes, but they will manipulate the shot like crazy. And all of a sudden, it just goes to hell in a handbag. A lot of it has to do with how they hold the rear bag and they start twisting it so the rifle's not tracking straight or the bag's falling away. The toe or the heel digging into a bag or onto the ground, the way that you're gripping it and allowing it, how you twist your arm around to support, your left hand, if you're right-handed, your left hand supporting your rear, how you do that, where you touch it, and then making sure that while the rifle is shooting, while the shooting process is going, that you don't overgrip or instantly relax. So it's funny that I would say once we're in the day 2 of the long-range shooting school that we teach here, if we're watching shooters enough, and this is a learned thing, right? A lot of new instructors are very quick to start throwing out all kinds of suggestions, right? So let's just say, for example, a student is shooting at 600 yards, and they were shooting well. They were doing great, and all of a sudden it just goes to hell in a handbag, right? They're all over the place. And instantly, within a couple shots of that, they start to get frustrated. So they're looking for guidance from an instructor, and the instructor is really quick to give them some pointers. Let's try this. Let's look at this. Let's do that. And if it doesn't work, the frustration continues and builds and grows to where the student will begin to doubt that this guy even knows what he's talking about. What I have learned to do, and I'm sharing this with you, is don't say anything. Step back and watch. Let's just say a student looks at me like they really shanked a shot, and then they do it a second time. And they're going to look at me and they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, go ahead and shoot again. Don't do anything. Just shoot again. And they look at you like you're half crazy, like, well, aren't you going to tell me something? Aren't we going to change something? Aren't we going to do something? And no, not a thing. And what they don't realize, I'm not even watching the target. Now, I've probably watched the first round or two, and I'm convinced it's not the wind at this point, right? They're sporadically going all over the place. I'm watching them. More importantly, I'm looking at their setup. And almost instantly, within the first even shot or two, I'll do a quick scan of the shooter, and I'll catch it right there on the spot. And the shooters are dumbfounded. They're like, you're kidding me. And I'll fix the correction, like turn the bag properly or get their hand. They're shooting again, perfectly fine. An hour later, I look, they're doing the same thing again. the bag's twisted, they're not holding it properly, they're relaxing as soon as the shot breaks, and all of a sudden they're having, and I'll fix it again, and I'll fix it again, and I'll fix it again. This is a super common thing at the school to just, because as shooters, our eyes are 90% of our input, right? And so when we're looking at a target, that's controlling 90% of what's coming into us as far as shooting. And we lose touch. And we talked about this in the last podcast about all the feel of the rest of things that you have to control that you can't see. And so if you can't see it, you tend to not focus on it. You forget about it. If it's not in front of your face, it's easy to overlook and make common errors. So when I'm practicing myself, like if I'm out shooting and practicing and working on a rifle, I am really careful on the setup. If I think things are not looking right, or if, let's just say, a shot goes crazy and it wasn't the whim, I don't change anything other than, in my mind, I'm running through my setup underneath me, and I'm feeling the bag, I'm making sure it's straight. I'm checking all these things because more often than not, I got hyper-focused on something else. I was trying to time the wind. I was watching the wind. Do we shoot it in the now condition or predicted condition? Are we waiting for the conditions to come back, or are we running out of time and we have to instantly judge what's going on? As soon as you get distracted, bang, the shot goes. It's like we were talking the other day. It was really great. I got to spend some time with some incredible companies over the last couple of weeks, and we were talking about the one young apprentice, I guess, was saying about how he bought his first guitar and he's all excited. And the other guy was like, oh, that's awesome. I got a Gibson. And so it just turned out we all like music, right? And we all played. And the older gentleman was saying, hey, I love to play, but I can't play and sing. And, we had chimed in and said, when you become a really great musician as far as a guitarist, you become a really great singer, right? But if you want to do both together, it's actually 3 times the work, because you have to learn to play the song, you have to learn to sing the song, and you have to learn to do both at the same time perfectly. As soon as you're in the middle of a song, like let's just say you're playing in front of 1,000 people, right? People are having fun, they're looking at you, you're looking at them, everybody's doing this really cool stuff, right? As soon as your mind goes, oh shit, what was that last lyric? Or, oh shit, what's that next chord? Or where's my hand supposed to? As soon as you do, your focus shifts from singing or to playing, you mess the whole thing up. So it is, like the older gentleman had said, and I don't mean to throw you under the bus, Bill, if you're listening to this, if your focus shifts to one of those, you'll crash the whole thing. As soon as you start thinking about your singing, you're going to start messing up your playing. And so he's explaining to the youngster that was with us that to play and sing at the same time is just 5 times harder than learning to play or learning just to sing if you have that talent. And he was right. And shooting is the same way. You have to learn all these ballistics and winds and environmentals, right? Then you have to learn to be a great shooter. But now you have to learn to do them both together and with no vision. You can't see most of the things that either make a good shot or a bad shot. You can't look at everything. You're looking at the target. It's like flying. Like, I've got some hours in an airplane. I would love to learn to fly bush plane someday, but it's just not in the cards. Our business is growing and we're doing all kinds of really fun stuff. And it's what I like to do, right? So I'm not going to sacrifice any time here. But flying under the hood, they call it, where you're flying instruments only, where you lose your vision. Oh man, is that something else? I've got a chance to do that a couple of times, and you're trusting instruments and you're not trusting feelings. They'll get the plane going in a weird direction and your senses are all lying to you the whole time. You got to trust all the gauges and read everything. And same thing when you're shooting. You got to read all the instruments that you're working with. It's not always just feeling. And when we use our eyes as our primary shooting ability, our vision and our intent of just holding the crosshair still, there's so much more to it. So the other question that he had was, how would pistol shooting or pistol shooters cross over into long-range shooting? And I thought this was a great one. And we talked about this here already with a customer this week, that I find that those that come from an archery background or those that come from a pistol shooting background, think of like some type of competition involved in either, they take the long-range shooting like ducks to water. All they need is the recipe, because both of those, if you're good at either of those, there are fundamentals, there are rules, and they know how important each little part of the recipe really is. And they just need the formula. Honestly, I've watched so many times where we've had like competitive archers come through or competitive handgun shooters. Like Walt Sawyer is a great example. Walt's one of our instructors here, and he's a handgun instructor and shooter. He's a really good shot. My God, can he run a rifle? And it's just I think in those sports, they really have to focus on fundamentals because it's so important to all of it, like hyper focus, right? And so if they've mastered that, now they know how important fundamentals are. They need to know the rules of the game. And my God, can they take off? Like we had, he was a junior Olympic archery coach. He was one of the best, I think, in the country for what he does. Incredible guy, right? And I think he from West Virginia. And I mean, he was just crazy good with a rifle, and he had some experience with it. He wasn't new, but he never really was, fundamentally trained up. But it was like halfway through the class, it was just like that's all he needed. He needed to know what the important things to look for, and it was done. He was just crushing everybody, and he wasn't like a 10-year professional shooter with rifles. He was an archery guy that just loved to shoot, never really got much into the long range stuff, and it was just like, holy cow. So over the years, yes, to answer his question, those that migrate from pistol shooting or archery shooting and are good at it, that are students of the craft, I would say, when they get involved into long range shooting, it's amazing to watch. Their learning curve is a lot less hard, I would say. They just need the fundamentals. Well, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Before we continue on, we'd like to thank a couple of our sponsors. MDT's a great manufacturer of rifle chassis and stocks with a great selection of not just the stocks and chassis themselves, but also a lot of accessories. So if you want to upgrade your rifle and you like to do it with a stock or chassis, stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com. Also, we'd like to thank Krieger Barrels. Krieger is the maker of fine cut rifle barrels, family owned and operated business in the great state of Wisconsin. They are one of the premier rifle builders, and they offer a new program called Krieger Direct where they try to keep barrels in inventory ready for you to purchase to build your dream rifle. So if you'd like to learn more about Krieger Barrels, you can stop over to kriegerbarrels.com. That's kriegerbarrels.com today. Well, we hope you enjoyed this series. We're going to be diving into part 3 of our series next week. Also, again, just a reminder, don't forget, we're giving away 2 slots for our long-range shooting school for our August class. And all you have to do to register for one of these free all-inclusive 3-day school slots, that includes the use of the rifle and actually includes ammunition. All you have to do is go over to Patreon and follow us, and you are in the running for a slot. And if you'd like to join us in the Wolf Pack and join our online long-range shooting school, if you join the Wolf Pack as a paid member, we are going to give away a slot to one of you folks as well. So we'd like to thank everybody for joining us here at the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review. And if you would mind, we really appreciate you sharing it as well. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.